It's the next level.
I didn't care. Right then, I would have killed anything that got in my way. Know what that means, right? Now I'm the monster. Yeah. If any of those pieces of shit that I killed, if they deserve to die, so do I.
Panels to Pixels, The Punisher Season 2, Episodes 11, 12, and 13 review. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Mark.
And I'm Steve.
And we're doing the last 3 episodes. Wow.
Yeah, it's going to be a big one, all 3 episodes, but we're just going to take them one at a time, do 11 and then 12 and then 13. We're not going to try to mash them all together in this, because that gets me confused when people try to do multiple episodes all at the same time. We're just going to do 11 and then we're going to do 12 and then we'll do 13. So episode 11 is entitled The Abyss. And it starts out, Frank is in the hospital. He's under guard. Karen shows up. She's pretending to be his lawyer. Curtis goes back to the trailer to deal with what he's just done. Dr. Dumont tries to convince Billy to run away. And we see John Pilgrim get some bad news. But in the end, Frank makes it out of the hospital, but he may have more problems.
Yeah. There are a lot of problems with this one. Especially what happens. And we should get to our top 5, I guess.
So my number 5 is that I just mentioned Curtis coming back to the trailer without Frank. He admits to Amy, and I thought this was a very interesting revelation that he's never killed anyone before. That man he killed at the end of the last episode, that's the first time he's killed anyone, and it almost sounds like that's the first time he's even shot at people. You know, and he tries to get Amy to not leave to go stay with Frank. He really is trying to quit. We're seeing that he's got a lot of, I don't even know what to call it, but, definitely the working with Frank has taken its toll on Curtis.
Oh, definitely. You could see it, that it's wearing him down as a person. I don't think of Frank as being a burden. I think it's more of, it's like Frank's there and all this stuff happens and he wasn't prepared for it in any way.
Well, yeah, it's almost like Curtis is our everyman of this show. He's the guy who's like, he was just a regular guy. He was, you know, he had a little bit of trouble, maybe some PTSD, but he was working through that in the group therapy. He had his leg and, you know, he was selling insurance and he was just leading a normal life until Frank came into it and all of this stuff has happened.
Yeah. Yeah. If I were in that position, I'd be like freaking out.
Yeah, exactly.
My number 5 would be that intro with Frank still bleeding in the ambulance and then seeing John Pilgrim's house with Mrs. Schultz answering the phone. John Pilgrim's wife is dead. The hearse is leaving the house. That was, ugh.
Yeah, the first time I watched it, I mean, like, I thought that the wife was dead, but I didn't put it together until the second time when I realized, oh, that's a hearse pulling away. And then when the camera pans back and we see, not Mary Lou Henner. Yeah. We see Mrs. Schultz and the bed is empty and the sheets have all been stripped away.
Yeah.
You know, and so it wasn't really until the second time. I mean, I knew that the wife had died, but it wasn't until the second time that I saw those things that made it for sure that it wasn't just something we suspected. It was actually for sure she was dead.
Yeah, it was a bit disturbing, and you wonder in the back of your head while you're watching, what's going to happen? What's John Pilgrim going to do if she tells him the truth?
Yeah.
What what's going to happen with Frank when he has to deal with John Pilgrim, you know?
Yeah. My number 4 is is that scene with Karen lying and then using some logic to try to get the cop to let her in, saying, well, if I can't speak to my client, then they could get a mistrial, and you don't want the other cops blaming you for the Punisher getting released. So I thought that was a really interesting kind of scene that she did. And obviously in her time as a reporter, she's had to do some lying to get in to see people and interview people. And we can definitely see that she still cares for Frank. And I thought it was interesting. This is the only episode she's been in this second season. And do we know what the timing of this is? I didn't watch Daredevil season 3, so I don't know what happens to her.
I never got into it. I started watching the first 3 episodes. That was about it.
Right.
And then I stopped there because we were going into this. And I thought, I'll hold off, and then eventually we'll get into that. And I will definitely be rewatching with a close eye.
Yeah, I'm going to have to rewatch as well because I want to see, because it's going to be more so. I think I've got it in my notes later for this, but there's really the relationship between Karen and Frank is one that I wish we could we could have gotten more of.
Yeah, kind of like the reactions within the scene itself. It seemed a little bit more caring, but not loving as she was with Matt. But she understood Frank in a certain way just as much as she did Matt. The only thing is that I think she just feels for Frank so much as a friend, and he kind of took it a little differently.
Yeah.
And you could tell where she just wanted to help, just like everybody else does in this little Netflix world. That would bring me to my number 4, which would be, well, like you stated before, Karen coming to Frank's side. But, you can never have too many friends that care about you. But Frank lied to her about the ladies, or thinks that he really did kill those ladies within that shootout. I just like that Karen Page is still by his side and willing to help as much as she can for him. How often are you going to find those people? And the fact that she came there at that time of when he needed. And it just sparks a lot of, hey, there's a lot of history here. There's somebody here that's going to help, which leads us later on into furthering episode of what happens, which is really cool.
Yeah. And I really think Frank thought he killed those women.
I think so too. That was my final thought too. When you saw how he was very remorseful and upset about it.
Well, yeah, his reaction, and even when I've got, again, this is later on in my notes, where when the cop comes in to the room to kill him and he just kind of holds his arm out because in his mind, he has now become the criminals that he's been fighting. And so he deserves to die. And in his mind, anyway, that's the way I really think that's the way he was thinking, was that he deserves to be punished for that crime of killing those women. And it's a thing that it's again, we've talked about this before about John Bernthal's portrayal of the Punisher that's definitely different from the comic book Punisher, in that the comic book Punisher wouldn't care if those ladies got in the way. Well, that's their own fault for getting in the way.
Very true. Yeah.
That's the way the comic book Punisher would look at it. He would be like, I'm sorry that I killed them, but they got in the way. They were messing with criminals and they got in between me and my target. And that's what happens when you get between me and my target. But this is not the kind of Punisher that we have here. We have a Punisher here who really has a code, and his code is not to kill the innocent. He's going to be sure the people he's killing are not, the people he's killing are criminals. So
very true. Yeah. Which kind of separates him a little bit from the comic, which is very good because, like we said before, it humanizes him.
Yeah. The comic book Punisher would be very unsympathetic, I think, in our world today.
Yeah.
We would not be, we would be unsympathetic to him in this world today.
Exactly. We'd go after him as if he was a blatant villain, even though he's doing certain things for good. on occasion. Most of the time he's there for hire, but
Brings us to my number 3, which is that scene with Billy calling Madani's phone while Karen and Amy are there in the room. And it really seems like, and he kind of says this to Krista later, is that he's trying to get some closure with Frank, that he's trying to cut it off. And he shows those bullet casings. And this is where we get the first real evidence that Frank didn't kill those women, where he shows the bullet casings to Krista, and he just blatantly tells her those women are dead because of you, because of the direction you gave me about how to affect Frank. These women are dead. And she very clearly says that it doesn't bother her they're dead because she doesn't know them.
Oof.
I thought that was an interesting scene to show us something about her. That she's, well, I don't know them. I didn't know them. So it doesn't matter that they're dead.
yeah, very callous.
Yeah.
It's like
Exactly.
that is nothing like a doctor.
Exactly.
My number 3 would be the gang together of all
Yeah.
things, Karen, Madani, and Amy. Amy sneaking in as a nurse and Madani following up on Frank. Then Billy calling Madani, and they all listen to him on the speakerphone, and he just wants Frank to burn.
Yeah.
Knowing, I think they come to that realization is that, yeah, Billy set this up.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that Madani was starting to suspect, and that's why she wanted to go see the bodies for sure. Leads us to my number 2, which is that story that Krista tells about her father and basically how she got her scars and her injuries. She finally tells us the truth about that it was her father came back from Vietnam and had some PTSD, and when the mother was talking about leaving him, he said, well, if I can't have you, nobody can have you. And then he grabbed Krista as a child and dove out the window with her in his arms, and fell to the pavement, and he died and she lived. And it's just heartbreaking to hear that story.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That was really wacky. My number 2?
Yep. You're number 2.
That would be John Pilgrim going nuts. Knowing that Mrs. Schultz, I got the name right, Mrs. Schultz,
Yeah. Very good.
is basically using Bible quotes to keep him in line to do what she needs him to do. It's very manipulative, and I don't think at this point he realizes what she's doing to him. And it's going to come to a closure where he's going to realize it, and all HEW hockey sticks are going to happen,
She uses it's really, and it's an interesting scene that we see because it really seems like there's some way that they're able to travel. She and her husband are able to travel back and forth from wherever they are to New York in pretty quick amount of time. So I don't know how far away they were or what, but because, she travels back and forth pretty quickly in these last few episodes between New York and where the kids are.
Yeah, they have a lot of money.
Apparently. Which leads us to my number 1, which I've kind of already touched on it a little bit, but it's that thing about Frank. He wanted Karen to leave. He wanted her to go away, to walk away. He says, it's almost like it seemed like she had feelings for him and he wasn't willing to reciprocate those feelings. But then, she does end up walking away. Madani is helping Frank out of the hospital. Amy kind of walks out on her own. She gets rid of that nurse's uniform.
Yep.
She walks right past Mahoney, and he doesn't even know who she is, and then the very end of the episode, when they get outside, Madani and Frank get outside, Mahoney gets his man, and he finally has his cuffs on Frank, getting him in the ambulance and take you to jail.
Yeah, I have to agree. My number 1 is just the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that ending with the getaway from the hospital. It was all a setup by Frank's friends to get him out, literally. And Karen being the one to help mastermind the plan was really cool and inventive. Very well done. I was laughing when I saw Ed with Karen's shoes on and walking into the hallway.
Mahoney, what happened to your shoes, Karen? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Then Mahoney gets to do something a little crazy on his own, But I was thinking, what's he going to do with Frank? Because I'm not thinking, he's going to take him in, but that's literally what it was.
Yeah, it did seem a little weird that he would be taking him. It's kind of like I think the thinking from Mahoney was, well, if he's healthy enough to walk out of the hospital than he's healthy enough to be in a jail cell. You know, that has to be, because remember the nurse was talking about how badly he was beaten and all these lacerations.
Yeah.
But then, you know, later Mahoney, I don't know if it's this episode or the next episode, when he talks about the fact that they only used rubber bullets and they used rock salt and they weren't trying to kill him. So none of Frank's injuries are, you know, unless he has some internal injuries. That's what the nurse says. She says she doesn't know what the internal injuries are. So obviously he must not have had, the internal injuries must not have been very bad, because especially by the end of the final episode, we see that, you know, just a few months later, he's completely healed up and he's 100% again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he definitely was 100%.
So I had a couple of quotes here before we get into extra notes. And I thought it was really interesting when Billy's talking to Dr. Dumont, and it really seems like he really has closed the book, at least until what happens at the end of the next episode, or the end of this episode. Yeah, the end of the next episode, actually. He really has kind of closed the book on Frank, because he tells her the thing about getting what you wanted is that sometimes it's a disappointment. He talks about that cutting out of the cancer later as well, you know, so.
Yeah, with the cutting out, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
And then, of course, when he's talking to Karen and she's trying to get him to stop fighting and he says, I don't want to. I thought that was
Yeah, I just had a couple, but, you know, when Frank turns to Karen, goes, does Murdoch know you're here? And Karen looks away, and he's like, I thought so. It was a touching scene. Karen was there for Frank, even though Matt is not in her life, apparently. And it's really weird, but the fact that she holds on to that to me, it showed a lot.
Yeah.
And the cop saying, Karen, what happened to your shoes? And then, of course, her quick comeback is, I gave them away for a worthy cause.
Yeah, that was really good.
I really got a chuckle out of me, because it's like, yeah, worthy cause.
Yeah. Some additional notes that we didn't talk about already.
Yeah, Karen's owing to Ed.
Yeah.
I thought that was really funny. I'm curious, but I don't think we ever saw what she had to do.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it was a date. And Billy doing the actual execution of the ladies, then picking up the shells, like you said before. Apparently he didn't do his homework in investigations on crime scenes. The ladies were shot horizontally with them in front of the gun or the shooter, not from firing from a distance or from down below, like they were speculating. Something that Ed brings up with the powder burns. They were only about 5 feet away, plus they were killed earlier in the day, something I'm sure that will come up in further investigations within an autopsy, which would clear Frank in a long run.
Yeah, that's interesting. This is in my notes as well, is the fact they didn't make us wait too long to find out for sure that Frank didn't kill these women. But I do agree with you. It does seem a little bit like he didn't do a very good job of framing Frank. Like it was not a frame job that was going to hold up for very long.
Yeah, it was something to detain him, basically.
Yeah. With any scrutiny, they were gonna pick that apart. You know, that Frank hadn't done it.
All right, you had a few yourself?
The only thing that we haven't really talked about is Mrs. Schultz when she goes to see John. We talked a little bit about that, but I thought it was really interesting. And it's actually, I have it in the wrong place, because it's actually in the final episode when she says John can't come back. So I actually had that in the wrong spot. So I think everything I've got, we have really talked about already. I mentioned the cop trying to kill Frank, and that he was just going to let him.
Yeah, the only other thing I had was, well, being a home theater installer is what I do. I keep seeing that small Cenis articulating arm mount for the 20-inch to 40-inch TVs in Frank's hospital room. And it keeps getting to me not seeing a TV on it. What, they're just trying to eliminate TV from these people?
He was a prisoner, so they probably took the TV away, thinking he's a prisoner. They're not going to give him the TV. But I will be honest, I did think about you. When I kept seeing that on the wall, I was like, man, I bet that's going to drive Frank. That's going to drive Mark nuts.
It is.
But I really think that's probably what it was, is that they took that out because they knew he was a prisoner. They had a prisoner in there, and they're like, we're not going to waste the TV on a prisoner.
It was driving me nuts. It was bonk. I was like, really? Come on. Really? And again?
It brings us to episode 12, which is entitled Collision Course. And just a quick synopsis of this episode is that John Pilgrim, he attacks Frank because we pick up almost right where the last episode left off, with Frank and Mahoney in the ambulance, and John Pilgrim attacks them. And then Frank, he's going to look for John Pilgrim. And while John Pilgrim looks for Frank, we see a little bit more of that as he escapes in Madani's car. And then Madani goes to see Dr. Dumont, and Billy tells the doctor that he's going to run. This is the penultimate episode. So all of our storylines are starting to come together here. We're starting to see everything setting up for that final episode. So what was your number 5, Mark?
My number 5, well, that would be that intense first scene. Now, that's a way to start an episode. John Pilgrim trying to take out Frank and Mahoney while they're in the ambulance. That was absolutely crazy. Frank's dislocated arm with that impact from the drop from the overhead to the street level, that was ridiculous. Coming from one ramp over onto... Oof. That was ridiculous. That was some Walking Dead Carol Darrell stuff there from a past season, if you remember, with the van. But, oh my God, I was like, with that and him being handcuffed, I felt the pain from my arm. Plus, his Lethal Weapon Riggs type work of setting it back into place, his arm. With the ambulance, that was I just had like flashbacks of Mel Gibson's like smacking like twice from Lethal Weapon 2.
Yeah, and this was actually my number 5 as well. And I think the way I put it in my notes is I said, "Hey, Walking Dead, this is what happens when a van falls off an overpass." Because we see it actually scrunch the cab up, and Mahoney's got to be the luckiest cop ever because he had to be just barely out of that cab when it hit the ground. Because I thought he was dead, to be honest, when I first saw it, because I was like, there's no way he could have survived that cab hitting the ground and being scrunched into the rear of the ambulance. But as we see when the camera comes back and shows us them inside, he had just gotten out of the cab before it struck, and then Frank breaks that bar to get out, sees the flames. Like you said, he resets his shoulder, and then he goes in and Mahoney gets the chance to find out what it's like to be protected by Frank Castle. I thought that was really interesting because that's one thing that he hasn't seen. Everybody's been talking to him about this code that the Punisher has, but he hasn't actually seen it in action yet. And so it's when he actually sees it in action that he's able to not shoot Frank in the back.
Oh, thank goodness. That would bring me to my number 4, which would be Pilgrim, Curtis, and Amy in the safe house. That was really intense, that scene, honestly, to see them all together. And then, John Pilgrim. Yeah, Scott Pilgrim's another thing entirely. John Pilgrim knocking out Curtis and taking Amy away. That was, I was like, what's going to happen now?
Yeah, it was, that was an interesting scene, that whole thing, and she escapes. And my number 4 was, just very simply that fact that Billy, he really does wants to get away from everything. He gives his crew their money. He gives them their passports. Krista calls up Madani and tries to kind of find out where the investigation's going. How much do they know? Is Billy alive? Is Billy dead? She's really kind of testing Madani to find out what's going on. And what we find out at the end of the episode is that Madani wasn't fooled for a minute. As soon as Krista called her, she was going to go over there and see what was going on. So it was really interesting to see that fact that Billy really had kind of closed the book on his stuff with Frank. He was willing to let it all go and leave with the doctor, or apparently leave with the doctor. But of course, that gets derailed.
Yeah. And my number 3 would be Billy setting his group free, just like you said. Yeah. Like it was a farewell, like he was inviting death or something, especially with that tagline. And to me, it was like, is he just saying goodbye because he's going to die, or he's done with them, No,
I really think he was done. I think he walks out and he says, it's been an honor to serve with you. And he takes his part of the money and he walks out. He gives them all their passports. He says, you guys have got new names, new lives. You've got money. You can go wherever you want, do wherever you want. Let this go. Even all the guys in that crew wanted to go after Frank, and Billy's like, no, don't do that. You're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to get him. It's just going to be more killing. Let's just all go our separate ways. It really, to me, I really got the sense that Billy was ready to turn his back on all of this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it was really odd. Plus, I was hoping that some of those characters or their names were something from the Wrecking Crew. If you remember Luke Cage and Iron Fist, their villains in the comic books were the Wrecking Crew, and they carried like chains and some sort of mallet or something, and they were literally bank robbers and everything else, and they just caused chaos. And I was thinking, maybe these guys become this, and then eventually they'll turn that into, like, villains for the Netflix, and they have masks or whatever, but I don't think that's going to happen now.
No, not at all. Brings us to my number 3, which is just very short, is Frank going and getting the senator and then bringing him to the trailer, and it sets everything up for the next episode of what's going to happen. He calls, it's really interesting, he calls from a payphone, of all things. He calls in obviously to some sort of dispatch or 911 or something, because he gives the cop's uniform he stole. He gives that cop's badge number and name, and he's trying to get the address for this senator. And the only thing that didn't make sense to me was kind of at this point, Mahoney has already figured out that Frank has escaped and they know what uniform he has. So you would think that badge number or whatever would be flagged like in the system. Like if that badge number calls up for something or that guy's name comes up for something, you would think people would catch on to it. But that's probably thinking way more than I need to about it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I guess we had to suspend our disbelief a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
My number 2 would be John Pilgrim praying as he removes the buckshot from his body, his bloody, messed up leg, I should say, in the room, with Amy looking for him within the hotel with the gun in the lobby, That scene was so...
Is that in this episode? That's in the next episode, I think.
No, that was in this episode, because I was...
In this one?
I was doing it...
Oh, you're right.
I was doing this real time as I was rewatching. I was doing my notes that way. That scene was really scary, and it was really ominous. It was... And to see that leg the way it was, ugh.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That was a lot of blood. And I hope he wrapped it in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is going to play way more into the next episode, especially as how injured he is, and how much he does with all the injuries that he's got. He's almost superhuman in kind of the way he's able to still react.
Well, it'll be a human scar.
Yeah. My number 2 is just that end fight between Madani and Dumont, ending with her throwing Krista out of the window. And of course, Billy sees her on the pavement. He's got the flowers, and, then it's all setting up. It goes right into my number 1. So I'm going to put my number 1 and my number 2 together, I guess. Or number 2 and number 1 together, because it sets right up for the next episode with him running into the building after seeing Krista on the pavement.
Yeah, that would be my number 1 as well. The fight with Madani and Dumont. I thought that Madani would have had her earlier on, but the outcome was something I was seeing ahead of time during the fight. After we saw Billy with, he got her the flowers, Dumont the flowers. The ending song was really good. That depicted a lot in the ending scene, and it showed what was going on within the scene itself. It was kind of like a narrative.
Yeah. Yeah, really good. I had a couple of quotes here, and of course, this was the episode where Billy makes the quote about the cancer. He says, "Once you cut the cancer out, you don't want it back." And then I loved I think it was when Madani was talking to Mahoney in the warehouse there, when he was laying out kind of the evidence about what had happened, or later on. Anyway, but Madani has a very cool line where she says, "Frank is not a criminal. He's not a hero either. He's just Frank." And, we had that earlier in the season when he was saying that he's the Punisher, that's all he is. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is. Mine would be Billy saying, "It's not where I'm going. It's who I'm going with." And that was a bit odd, but it kind of shows where he is going later on and what happens to him in the end.
Yeah, and that's what he says to his crew, when they were talking about, where are you going to go? Why are we all going to leave? And he's like, it's not where I'm going. It's who I'm going with, talking about, again, it just goes back to that idea that I think before he saw Krista on the pavement, I think he really was ready to go.
Yeah.
The only other note I really had that we haven't discussed is that when John Pilgrim is in the trailer and he's talking to Curtis, he kind of admits to Curtis that he would have already judged Curtis just by the color of his skin. He doesn't say color of his skin, but that's really what I got was the implication there was he says, there was a time when I would have just thought you were whatever. You were a bad guy, that you were a liar, you were a cheater and all this just because of who you are. I would have just judged you immediately instead of talking to you. But then through talking to him, he's like, no, you're lying to me. He makes that really cool line about when he's at the trailer and Curtis is trying to play off that trailer is where he gets his booty calls and and John Pilgrim says, this isn't a place where you live. This is a place where you come to hide. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. And pretty much exactly what he was saying too, if you think about it. Yeah.
So this leads us to episode 13, the final episode of the season, and unfortunately the series finale as well. And it was entitled The Whirlwind. For me, there's a little bit of it that's a little anticlimactic, kind of, in some respects, because we know that we're not going to see the Punisher in this form again. It is a good ending nonetheless. We wrap up all the storylines by the time, and we'll get into it in our top fives, I'm sure. By the time we get to the end, we've got all the storylines are kind of wrapped up. There's really nothing left hanging, and we just have the Punisher out there being the Punisher.
Oh, yeah.
So you want to start again?
I will definitely start if you'd like.
Yeah.
My number 5 would be that opening, taking off where we left off, just like you said. Now, that was really interesting. No one dead. What are these people made of? It's ridiculous. It's like getting thrown out of a window, falling, I don't know what, on a second floor?
Yeah, three stories. That's what Mahoney says later in that episode. He says she fell 3 stories.
3 stories.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And I'm sorry to get away from that. And on top of that, Madani still, living with everything that she had to go through. And then on top of that, Billy coming in and taking how many slugs? Was it 5?
Yeah, eventually it was 5. She thought she shot him 3 times, but he'd already been injured before that as well. Yeah, no, I had the same thing. This was my number 5 as well. Was just, I think in fact, it was the very first watch. I put it in my notes. I was like, what? Madani can't die this early. Oh, okay. She's not dead. She's not dead. Oh, Krista's not dead either. Oh, and Billy's not dead either. It was just kind of like I'm kind of with you. It was kind of like one of those things where at the very beginning, we're like thinking that we have 3 characters that are already dead and none of them are.
Yeah.
In fact, by the end of it, only one of the 3 is actually dead.
Yeah, definitely. That would lead me to my number 4.
Yes.
Which would be the doctor operating on Billy. That was a little sick. Billy didn't want anything to be, or anything or be under while he was getting that. Yep, he's crazy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's one of those. That was a tough scene to watch. In fact, I had to fast forward through it the second time I watched because it was just with him digging around in his abdomen there, trying to pull the bullets out, and you're just like, oh, it's like as bad as John Pilgrim was. My number 4 is I was a little confused, and I think I finally figured it out on the second watch because do you think did Amy get the number wrong, the room number wrong, or because okay, so here's the way I view it. She tells Frank that he's in room 630. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now we know that he's in at least one of those rooms because her back was when she hears him praying in the previous episode, her back is to room 629. So okay, 630 is across the hall. Well, yeah. But when Frank goes down there, he breaks the door down to the room we presume has to be 630, but that room is empty. The bed is made, but there is a suitcase on the table, on the little night table. So he's kind of looking around in the room, and while he's in there, John Pilgrim is in the room next door, which I finally figured out that's where the hookers were a few episodes ago.
Yep.
When he ran them out. So he actually has control of both those rooms, but apparently he's chosen this other room to do all of his doctoring and his bloody stuff. And that's the room that he was actually in. And so he starts shooting at Frank through the walls. And then Frank shoots back at him and runs out of the room and goes to tell Amy to run away. He goes down the hall to tell Amy to run away. Now, this is where it gets confusing because now John Pilgrim comes out of the room that he's in, the room that he was shooting at Frank from, goes into the room that Frank was in, and that's where he goes under the bed, and all the guns are under the bed. And so Frank comes back down the hall after telling Amy to run, and he goes into the room that John Pilgrim had been in. Because then he's in the room that has all the messed up sheets and is all bloody and it's empty as well. And then John Pilgrim starts shooting at him from the room next door. It's just a lot of room swapping and shooting. And it was really confusing the first time I watched it, but I think I figured it out. And the only thing I can figure, going back to my original question, is that when she went, she knocked on the door and then she kind of ran down the hallway and she saw him come out of one of those rooms. And she must have just not realized which room he came out of. That's the only thing I can think of. And so she just gave Frank the wrong room number.
Yeah, well, she wasn't certain because he had control of both rooms, so he could do whatever he wanted. And that would lead me to my number 3, which would be that firefight between Frank and John Pilgrim in the hotel. That was awesome. A little flawed, but awesome. And I hate to bring it up because I'm sorry, I work in people's houses. I work in commercial buildings, and there are studs in between walls in hotels, people. Metal ones. I guess I had to suspend my disbelief for a bit for that scene because seeing Frank jump through the wall, yeah, it was Swiss cheese and, the sheetrock just, breaks away because there's holes in it. But honestly, no, because if there were metal studs in there, oh goodness, no, he would hit one of them or two of them in the process of jumping through. So I had to suspend my disbelief for that one. And then the fight in the elevator, that was great. It reminded me of Captain America Winter Soldier, but with a smaller elevator when he was dealing with the police at that time. And that whole taser thing, that was funny to watch.
Yeah, it was really, that was a great, and I'm kind of with you on that, is that because it seemed like, this isn't the low cut rate motel, no-tell motel that they were kind of in at the beginning of the season when Frank busts through the closet wall, to create that, when he had that firefight with the mercenaries. Yeah. It's not that. It looks like it's a better end. It's a higher end hotel, kind of, so the wall, you would think the walls would be a little bit thicker in between, but yeah, I'm with you. You got to kind of suspend your disbelief on that one and let them have their fight. Which brings me to my number 3, which is that fight between Frank and John at the trailer. And it was a lot like the Kill Bill Volume 1 fight between the bride and Oren Ishii, between Lucy Liu and, oh, that's horrible. The name escapes me. Gosh.
I know who you're talking about.
Anyway, she's been in all of all those movies. But anyway, even to the point where there was a time when Frank stopped and he goes, "Do you need a minute?" And John Pilgrim is like, "I was waiting for you." So they start fighting again. And, you have these two very highly motivated, violent men. They're both wounded, but they're fighting on. And I have to wonder, and this is what I kind of wonder as I watch it for the second time. Do you think if both of them had been 100%, do you think John Pilgrim would have prevailed? Because he was wounded a lot more than Frank. And he seemed to be holding his own, even though he was wounded. He's got that sucking, the wound on his side that he's been having to bandage up throughout the episode. Like you said, he's got the buckshot in his leg.
Yeah.
He was beaten up. And so I tend to wonder if John Pilgrim had been at 100%, and it might have been bad for the Punisher there, What do you think?
I think that John Pilgrim would have given him a roughing up, definitely, but he would be working on pure adrenaline at that point. Okay. Frank would still have the upper hand of having a little bit more health in him in comparison. Okay. But I just I think it would probably be a good match. It makes me curious what the show would have done with John Pilgrim later on if he were to come back, and who he would be kind of in comparison to Punisher.
That's interesting. I wonder if they would bring him back.
Well, kind of like my thoughts of like, hey, what would happen if they brought Micro back in season 3 if they had one?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're to your number 2.
Yeah, which would be Frank's fight with John Pilgrim during the exchange and convincing to let Amy go and just fight it out, but letting him live in the end. But also, the way that Frank kind of manipulated the situation because he didn't have the Schultz's son at all. And that was what threw John Pilgrim over the edge to go crazy,
Yeah, that's kind of, that's one of those interesting things that you have to wonder about. That was a pretty good bluff he pulled, that, that John Pilgrim didn't ask to see the son before he let Amy go. So.
Yeah, that, you know how to play a good hand of poker at that point,
Exactly. So my number 2 is, it's kind of like what I saw at the end of this is it's very similar to like Frank killing the man that Amy shot a couple episodes ago. And he tells Amy, you didn't kill him. I killed him. Madani shoots Billy, but Frank is the one who actually kills Billy. So Madani doesn't have to hold that guilt of having killed him. And even at the end, when Mahoney asks her if it was her that put the other 2 bullets into him, she's like, well, that's I'm flattered if I was the one who did it, but I wasn't, and then even at the end, when he kills Mrs. Schultz, when she tries to grab the knife to go after Amy, and then he lets, Mr. Schultz kill himself. He takes that away from John. He doesn't put that guilt on John. And it goes back to what Frank had said earlier in the last few episodes there, where he said, that he can handle it. It's horrible and he has the nightmares and it bothers him, but he knows that there's something different in him, that he's able to do these things and carry the burden.
Yeah, that would lead me to my number 1. That would be seeing Frank finalize everything, embracing and who he is, why he's doing what he's doing. He saved Amy, he stopped Billy, and then he helped John Pilgrim, who was used as a pawn. Mm-hmm. He became the Punisher at the end, which was depicted in the comic. He didn't have as much remorse if you looked at the way he just dispatched Billy in the end. Mm-hmm. But he did have some sort of remorse for John Pilgrim because he realized, okay, and that's his code saying, you had a family, I had a family, I understand, and you were used. And he didn't kill him. He just let him go on his way with his sons. And, that scene with Corbin Burnson was hard to see, honestly. He showed what a good actor he is within that scene. And we haven't seen I haven't seen Corbin Burnson in a long, long time, and I thought he sold it very well.
Yeah, it's a really powerful scene, and it's really good that we see that kind of stuff, and then wrap it up, which leads directly, it's very similar to what my number 1 is just, I love that ending that we have with Frank, like you said, kind of embracing being the Punisher. And, he tells when Madani says, I've got a job for you, because she's now with the CIA. And he says, well, I've already got a job. And, we see him go into that room where he's set up. And obviously, it's obvious to me, he set up that whole killing ground till he got those two gangs to think they were actually having a sit-down meeting for some kind of peace talk, and it wasn't the case. It was actually the Punisher setting them all up to kill him. It's just too bad that the world of contracts and negotiations, has robbed us of this show and robbed us of this portrayal of the character. It would be interesting to see a season 3, what they do in a season 3. If they, we talked about this when we talked about what season 2 was going to be. We talked about whether it would be episodic or be a serial, or, or whether, what it would be. And, so I would have really been interested to see what they did with this character going forward, and we're just not going to get a chance.
Yeah, it seemed like they were looking to go like season to season with different situations, and the next season would have started off with him working with Madani and being called in as pretty much almost like an executioner, or just to fill out a role that they couldn't do within the CIA. And you did get that guttural, loud, double gun shooting Punisher that you get from the comic book from John Bernthal at the very end.
Yeah.
Which to me was like, wow, that is a cool shot.
Yeah.
But, we won't really, mind you, with Disney Plus, and they can't do anything with a lot of this Netflix market. They can't do anything for another 2 years possibly. Hopefully they could buy out, but whether or not they actually bring back the same actors that's very hard.
I doubt it. Yeah,
It's highly doubtful.
doubt it. Yeah.
And Ben had made a comment stating, yeah, you're not going to get the same people, but I just hope that they could actually, and we've said this before, institute like maybe Daredevil into the MCU, maybe Punisher could be brought in, because it is a harder character, but when it came into play in the comics, it was brought in through Spider-Man, and that's a completely different thing. So with what they're looking to do with like Deadpool and keeping it R-rated, but not under the Disney logo, hopefully they will do something where they bring it back. And fingers crossed, I would love to see Jon Bernthal on the big screen as the Punisher in a different movie scenario, because what better way to continue on would be to actually have a movie with Jon Bernthal in as a lead as the Punisher, and where we don't have a consistent change of Punisher people, We've already had 3. We had Dolph Lundgren, who I met, Thomas Jane, and then, in the movie format, we had another one, a third person. I forget that particular movie, but he was a very larger man in comparison. And then we got Jon Bernthal for the Netflix series, but I'm hoping that they would just continue on and put it into a movie format,
Yeah, we can speculate all day. I don't think, I'm just, at this point, I think we're just going to have to resolve ourselves to, we're not going to get that in the form that
we have to have what we have for what we had it for, Yeah.
Exactly. So I had a couple of quotes here that I really liked. I liked that Dumont at the end is still convinced that Billy's out there, and she says, when the time is right, he's going to come for me. And then, of course, that little exchange between Mahoney, Curtis, and Madani when Mahoney says, well, and what about Castle? And both Madani and Curtis go, who? Just that whole idea that they're going to let him, he's out there and he's going to be him,
Yeah, the only thing I get was that crazy doctor that Billy goes to. It looks like somebody in an alley or something in a warehouse. And the doctor looks at him and goes, I need a drink. Trust me. Yeah. And then showing his shaking hand before he starts to operate on him, which really didn't do much anyway for him, because he wound up getting tossed into a dumpster.
Yeah. So you get some notes. That leads right into your note too.
Yeah, which would be the use of the song The Rooster by Alice in Chains when Billy was in the dumpster. Seems like nothing was going to stop him. It was a theme for Billy, especially at the end when Frank stopped the rooster and just shooting him down, which was really sad. But he had to put him down Yeah, and I don't think I had this in my notes, but I meant to put it there is the fact that he doesn't even let, Billy starts to say something like, I'm sorry. And Frank, like you mentioned, Frank just shoots him. Yeah. It did lead me, there was one moment I had that I kind of thought, how did the doctor get Billy into that dumpster? Like, it just, like, it was, okay, it's a cool shot. That's one of those suspend your disbelief kind of things, I guess, because it was a cool shot to see Billy have to crawl himself, pull himself out of the dumpster, and he falls onto the ground from the dumpster. But then I'm looking at it going, that doctor did not look like he was the kind of person who'd be able to lift up a 180-pound man and throw him in the dumpster. It just didn't ring true for me. Like, I think it would have been better if they just showed him like on the ground somewhere or something, not in a dumpster. Like it looked like he was dropped from from above down into the dumpster, and I'm like, I don't even know how that would happen, but yeah. We got a little bit of a comment this past week based upon my little Spider-Man 1977 review from that drop.
I didn't see that.
So Paul Williams wrote, I love that you'll be talking about the 1977 Spider-Man with Nicholas Hammond. He goes, I remember the pilot and series as a kid, just like I did. Really wish they'd put an official Blu-ray version already. I know there's a fan group that was trying to get a crowdfunding campaign together to restore the original series, but they've gone quiet over the past several months, so who knows. Thanks, Paul, for responding, and thanks. I hope you listened to it. I thank you for the feedback. And yeah, I threw up a bunch of YouTubes about Nick Hammond. Apparently he's doing cons again, but he lives in Australia. So he was able to come into one of the cons in the United States when he was in the area and spend a day or two and give some time and give some feedback. And to sum up from what I said, I wasn't really feeling well last week. So to give you a overall idea, basically, I loved it as a kid. So I loved the Spider-Man 1977, even though the first interaction we got live action really was the Electric Company, even though Spider-Man was mute and we never saw Peter Parker.
Yeah.
But I had to reflect and go back, and I've reflected over it over years, and occasionally I'll watch it. It's what we got at that time. So I enjoyed it. I loved it back then. I still enjoy it every once in a while, just for the fact that it's nostalgia. I had to go back. I had to watch it. And it was the first thing that we've really gotten on primetime TV, which actually launched into the Incredible Hulk and Wonder Woman TV series. And they wound up growing and having more seasons than Spider-Man ever did. Spider-Man only lasted maybe a season and a half. And they had a couple of movies in between sprinkled. But, you know, I still reflect and enjoy and love that. I definitely would love to meet Nick Hammond and just talk to him if I had a chance at a con. But thanks, Paul, for sending in a comment. Anybody else that wants to send any feedback, please do, because, you know, Paul got through and I was glad that somebody listened to it. Alex Baelish, who we had on for Walking Dead Talk Through a couple of weeks ago, he asked me through Messenger about doing possibly some of the nostalgia cartoon stuff. I said, we'll get to it. So hopefully I could bring him on because he seemed interested in talking about the old Spider-Man or even the, I forget the name of the the Super Friends. There we go. And he was talking about that, and he sent me a GIF with the Wonder Twins powers activate and everything,
very cool.
Which is pretty cool. So we'll hopefully get in, and we'll do that as a filler. It was only a 22 to 25 minute show that I threw in because mainly for the fact I was sick, Steve was sick, and Steve was out there having fun doing House Podcast to Go with Kristen, which was awesome. You guys got to go listen to that.
Yep.
So we got a little bit of comic talk and some news. So you want to start us off?
Sure. Yeah, I was finally able to pick up to find the Batman Who Laughs, and I was able to finally read the first issue. I really was intrigued by it. I didn't realize, I got a little confused about it. I didn't realize we were dealing with multiverses and multiple Batmans from multiverses in one universe. So it's going to be interesting to see how they play that out, or if they ever kind of explain how that was. I'm going to have to go back and reread the comic again, just with that understanding of, but I'm intrigued by it. It's only a 6-issue limited series. So I'm hoping I can get all of them.
Yeah, it's actually interesting, and I really highly recommend it for the fact that it's like a Batman who has like, he has no laws. He's like, okay, I'm just going to do what I want. And he's evil completely. The other bit of news that we would have is Disney Plus and all the fun stuff we're going to get. You know, it was Star Wars Celebration this week or this weekend right now. So Disney is just dropping all this information out. So we're getting a Winter Soldier and Falcon show on the Disney Plus streaming system, which is coming out in November. A What If comic to, TV show. And I love that series because, what if Spider-Man joined the Fantastic Four was one of them. That was one of my favorites.
That was one of my favorite comics to read as a kid, just to see what the different versions of these heroes, what might have happened if somebody went right instead of went left. What if, like you said, what if Spider-Man joined the Fantastic Four? What if the Thing continued to mutate, or things of that nature? Yeah.
And they actually ran that series pretty long from what I remember, but I only got the stuff from like the 70s into the 80s. But I saw in a back catalog recently that there were more, and it's based upon art, and I like the older style. I like that Silver Age and Golden Age look with how they draw, but the newer stuff didn't really, in the 90s really didn't grab me, so I still focus in on that. I'm hoping that they do something really cool. Maybe something that was going on within the MCU and they bring in a few people just to do like an hour long, or who knows how long these are. Yep. So, but basically the cost of the Disney Plus is going to be $6.99 a month. And I think they're doing it at $69.99 for the year if you want to subscribe just for the, pay it out yearly, which is really good. It's going to be very competitive with Netflix and all these other streaming companies now. And not only do you get Marvel, you're going to get like Star Wars, Muppets, everything that Disney owns, as well as including all the old Disney catalog of movies, of cartoons that we grew up on, like Snow White, Dumbo, all that. And it's going to be amazing. Like I said, today is Star Wars Celebration and it's day one. Disney is knocking it out of the park with this. I'm like a big Marvel fan, so Swamp Thing's coming out on DC, and I'm curious about that because I love the original movie by Wes Craven, and they did a campy kind of sequel to it years later in the 80s. I enjoyed that one because Dick Durock, who played the Swamp Thing in that, he used his real voice finally, and he was a bit comedic. And when I met the man, I met him years later at a con. He was really cool to talk to. And sadly enough, he's no longer with us, but I'm hoping that the new Swamp Thing for DC, the DC app, is really good because I really want to watch that. I'm hearing a lot of good things about Doom Patrol, but my big thing that I really want from Marvel to come out with, and we had it years ago in a movie form, was Man-Thing, and it was pretty much set as like a horror movie. I want it as like a TV show, and they could do an hour long and they could do something with that. But it was based originally, somebody was trying to replicate the super soldier serum and some sort of Louisiana backwoods where it has mysticism and everything else. And he becomes this creature. I really want to see that, but hopefully we'll get it soon.
Yeah, some of those shows sound pretty cool.
We have a few podcast recommendations. What are they?
I didn't have a chance to write a lot of these down this week, but I would highly recommend Strange Indeed, which is working their way through 2 episodes a week of The Umbrella Academy. That's a good one. House Podcastica, I was just on last week. They did a Hopes and Dreams episode, and they will be starting back up with new episodes next week. Those are both on the Podcastica network.
Yeah, we're gearing up all for Game of Thrones. So Steve and I will be watching that, as well as meeting up people probably towards the end of May for a get-together for the finale, which would be awesome.
Not much else right now since we're on the hiatus. I think the Walking Dead cast actually dropped their final episode of season 9, so they're on a bit of a break here until Fear starts again. They may have some filler episodes in between. They usually do, but we always recommend Walking Dead cast on Podcastica. And of course, listen to Brian on the Star Trek Discovery podcast on Golden Spiral Media, and you can hear us right here on Panels to Pixels.
And hopefully in June, well, it'll probably be like, the second or third week of June, that we're probably going to go into Fear the Walking Dead with the Walking Dead talk through with myself, Brian Malash, and Kyle. So you could hear me there as well. I might just pop in and out, depending, or I might be with just Kyle. We don't know. So it's definitely something that we all want to podcast about because we got the trailer and that dropped, and that was pretty cool. It's not really comic book related, but it's a spinoff of a comic book based TV show, which we all know is The Walking Dead. I would also recommend A Piece of the Puzzle with Evelina Rashino and Christina Wiggins and Erica. They talk about autism, and that could be found on the Next Level podcast network as well. And it brings a lot more to life about autism and how people struggle, what they learn. And it's a lot of information out there. I highly recommend it. We see this every day, but some people don't realize or how other people get through it. And there are people that are going through it with their own child and are not sure. This is a good way to educate yourself on autism and how to connect with others that are out there that have the same issues. So it's a good family-friendly and learning podcast, and I highly recommend it.
So if you want to submit your theories or feedbacks or whatever you want to submit to us, the best way to do it, there's 2 best ways to do that. And it's to contact us through our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/panels2pixels, or you send us an email at panels2pixels1@gmail.com. That's panels2pixels1. The TO in the middle is spelled out, and the number 1@gmail.com. What are we going to do next, Mark? We haven't figured this out yet.
Well, I'm going to see Hellboy tomorrow night.
I'd like to. I'm going to have to see what's going on with my weekend, whether I can see it or not. But if I do, we can definitely drop something about Hellboy.
Yeah,
next
just
week.
a quick one.
We'll let you know.
Yeah, let's go
Watch
from
the
there.
Facebook page. We'll put it on the Facebook page. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. So you can hear us on iTunes, Spotify, or Google Play.
Whatever podcast format of choice you use to listen to your podcast, throw us a review, give us a rating, let us know how we're doing. We always love to hear from our listeners.
Oh, definitely. Especially if within those mediums, if you could actually give us a review, that would be awesome. And send some feedback. Actually, please comment on our Facebook page. So with that, thanks everybody for listening. I'm Mark.
And I'm Steve.
And this was Panels of Pixels. Good night, everybody.
Good night.